Good evening, all. Today I wanted to talk about, or this evening rather, I want to talk about one of my favorite of the numerous Star Wars ripoffs that came out after that film was released. That is 1979's Starcrash, which was directed by the Italian director Luigi Cozzi and co-written by him and Patrick Watchsberger and R.A. Dillon. And it's in English, but it was produced in Rome, and it stars the very beautiful Caroline Munro as a character called Stella Star, who's sort of a female Han Solo kind of smuggler character. Marjoe Gortner as Acton, who's her alien co-pilot. He's humanoid, but he's not human. And he has some interesting powers. And then he's kind of like, oddly enough, he's kind of like Bork, and I don't think that's entirely coincidental. Christopher Plummer is the Emperor, who does a really good job, and for once he actually doesn't chew the scenery with the role, and he could have, but he didn't. David Hasselhoff, pre-Baywatch, pre-Knight Rider, pre-anything, basically. Very young David Hasselhoff is in this as Prince Simon, the Emperor's son. Judd Hamilton as a robot named Alan. His voice was dubbed after this was produced into English, and for some reason they gave him a Texas accent. Why a robot would have a Texas accent is beyond me, but they did that. They also dubbed, they had Candy Clark dub Caroline Munro's voice, which I do not understand because she has a gorgeous British accent, and I don't know why they would do that. I guess they wanted to make her sound American. Robert Tessier as a character called Chief Thor, who turns out to be a traitor. Joe Spinell as Count Zartharn, who's the bad guy, and really chews the scenery like a Republic serial villain, like, you know, Ming the Merciless. And he's just like, "You cowards, come back here!" Lines like that, and while people are being killed all around him. Nadia Cassini as Queen Corellia, who is the queen of a group of Amazons on this weird planet, and basically just stands around and says, "Kill him." You know, that's her whole role. And it's really, the music was done by John Barry, who you will know from many James Bond scores and a lot of other scores too. It's kind of interesting, sort of a little bit sappy and sentimental, the music, but it's interesting. This story is completely nuts. It makes almost no sense whatsoever, but it starts out with an Imperial expedition is attacked by these strange, like, red orbs, and all the members of the expedition appear to go mad. And then you cut to, you know, Stella Star's in a spaceship, and he's just being pursued by the space police, as it were, and that's Captain Thor and the robot Elle, who is a police robot at the beginning of this, and she's caught and arrested and thrown in jail, and manages to break out of jail when a fight ensues between some of the prisoners and some of the guards, and the prisoners wrestle away some of the guns and start shooting the guards, and a big melee breaks out with these, you know, laser guns. The laser special effects are really bad in this movie, but again, you know, for what it is, it's okay. I don't know what it is about the Italians, but the Italians like to put people in science fiction movies in leather spacesuits. And this goes all the way back to Planet of the Vampires by Mario Bava. Everybody, I know Bava is Spanish, but again, everybody in that movie had there were Italian co-producers, had leather spacesuits on, and the same thing happens in here. And, you know, goofy looking helmets, and that's part of, you know, Italian science fiction too. Things like Mission Stardust, again, everybody has these kind of you know, similar looking spacesuits. But this fellow's broken out of prison now, and she steals a rifle, and then she's arrested again, but this time it's by the same people, Captain Thor and the robot Elle. But now they're on a mission for the Emperor, and they say, "We're coming to rescue you. You know, we're coming to break you out of jail anyway." And the whole prison blows up, you know, and that's kind of an interesting scene. But so they take her to meet the Emperor, who is played by Christopher Plummer. Tells Stella that, you know, she's the only one. She has to go through the haunted stars, which I thought that was kind of a cool phrase, the haunted stars, to find this strange planet that is ruled by the evil Count Zartharn. who's sort of a Darth Vader type, and played by, like I said, by Joe Spinell, way over the top, scenery chewing kind of a villain. It was very fun to watch. But he's developed a secret weapon of some sort on a hidden planet. He'd sent an expedition, which is what we saw in the beginning, to find this planet, but they disappeared, and the expedition includes his son. And he tells Stella, you have to find him, he's my only child. And so they're sent off to, in a rather goofy sort of insect-looking spaceship, to this planet to find the planet. They got to go through the haunted stars. And they go through a series of strange adventures. They end up on a planet where there are all these Amazons, and she and Elle take a shuttle down to the surface, and they're met by these Amazons who immediately threaten them and arrest them. They try to kill Elle, and they shoot him, but of course he's a robot and he can't really be killed. And comes back at the last minute to rescue Stella, and shoots some of these Amazons, and they break out of the Amazon city, and Amazons have this enormous stop motion, like, metal Amazon that's like 60 feet high with an enormous sword. For some reason, why you'd give something like that a sword, which is a pretty inefficient weapon, is beyond me. But it like pursues them, and it tries to stop them. It throws the sword into this crevice that they're going to hide in, so now they can't go in there. And it's eventually destroyed by Acton. Has been in orbit, and he comes back and destroys this robot Amazon warrior that collapses. It's obviously like a woman wearing like aluminum foil. Really kind of a funny scene. And then they go back to on the ship, and they're trying to again find this strange planet. They eventually do find it, and they're immediately hit by this like wave of these same thing that hit the crew in the beginning. This red like balloons, and they're lights, and they're like flashing in their face, and they're making everybody like go crazy. And Acton Elle starts malfunctioning, and Stella passes out. Acton seems oblivious to them, and tells them later on that they were only hallucinatory. They weren't there actually at all. These quote-unquote red monsters don't really exist. But they end up on the real secret planet called the Demonia, which I thought was funny, of Zartharn. And they find his headquarters. They see all these computers, and they're trying to figure out that's where he generates these red monsters from that he's going to use to take over the universe somehow, by driving people mad. And they are going to just, they have to destroy the planet. But it turns out Count Zarthon's planning to do that anyway, and he's lured them there so he can destroy them and the Emperor. He's told the Emperor, "We found your son, and come get him. He's on this planet." And then they're going to blow up the planet and blow up the Emperor too. Well, they escape. They manage to battle these two, like they call them golems, which I thought was funny. But they're big robots that have swords that glow. They're not exactly lightsabers, but they're swords that glow. And Marjoe Gortner, Acton, actually has a lightsaber that's green, and fights them. And he's apparently mortally wounded. David Hasselhoff picks up the lightsaber and destroys the last of the golems. There were only two of them, but they were giant. And again, stop motion robot kind of things. And very, very badly animated, really. But then, Stella's saying to Acton, you can't die, you're my most human-like friend. I thought that was a funny line. You're my best, most human-like friend. And he said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll live forever." And he just vanishes. They never explained that. They never explained what really happened to Acton. He just sort of crackles with electricity, and his outline just vanishes. He told her, I'll live forever. So, he wasn't human, so maybe he would. Anyway, they have to confront Zartharn now. The Emperor arrives, and his son, Prince Simon, who's David Hasselhoff, and Stella tell him, Zartharn's going to blow up the entire planet. And Christopher Plummer says, "Well, I didn't become Emperor, not to have any powers of my own." So it says, "Imperial starship freeze time," and it shoots like a green beam at the planet, which again, these special effects are really cheesy and bad. And that will freeze time for 3 minutes, and the planet was about to blow up in 40 seconds. So that gives them time to get off the planet before it blows up. And they do, and they go back to the Emperor's starship. Now, the Emperor wants to attack Count Zarthorn before he's ready, before he can gather any of his forces. They're going to attack his base, which is this spaceship that, oddly enough, looks like kind of like a hand. And it's flat, but it's got like 5 sort of claw-like fingers that close in like this. And I don't know who thought that was a good idea for a spaceship. It's kind of goofy looking. And it's blue for no particular reason at all. And so the Emperor's forces start attacking. He has these kind of, again, really badly designed model spaceships that are gold, and they're kind of goofy looking, and they have like Christmas lights on them. A lot of the lights in this thing are actually Christmas lights, and even the stars are obviously Christmas lights. The stars are much too bright. That's one of the problems with the things. Even from like watching the moon landings, the stars are not really that bright in outer space. Yeah, you can see some, but they're not like bright blue and orange. And as far as I know, there are no pink stars. And there's like pink lights and purple lights. There aren't any purple stars either. So it's kind of funny. These are obviously Christmas lights used as stars, and they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna attack Zarthorn before he's ready. They start doing this. They're firing ships on him. They also have these quote-unquote torpedoes, which look like something out of Flash Gordon. They're literally a torpedo, and they break into the bridge of the Zarthorn ship, and then they break open, and there's soldiers in them, and they start shooting people. And again, that's a really silly, like Flash Gordon kind of idea. But they fight. Zarthorn's forces fight back, and eventually they kill all of the Emperor's forces. And now everybody's saying, "Oh, no, we've lost." And even Stella's saying, "We've lost. It's over." And the Emperor says, "No, there's one last thing we can do. It's a desperation move, but we have to do it." And they say, "What's that?" And he says, "Starcrash." Like David Hasselhoff says, "A fourth dimensional attack? What are you talking about?" He said, "We're going to use the floating city, quote unquote, and we're going to crash it into Zarthorn's ship." And so they abandon this floating city to get everybody off, and they need Stella and Prince Simon to pilot it, and then they're going to crash it into, like I said, Zarthorn's little hand and ship, and that'll destroy him somehow. So they start doing this. They go on board the floating city. Like I said, everybody's been evacuated, and Stella and Elle are actually piloting it. David Hasselhoff's Prince Simon is going to wait for them in the little shuttle spaceship and meet them when they're done. They're going to eject before the ship crashes into Zarthorn's base, and they do this, and they crash the ship. And this is where Joe Spinell is really great. He's dressed in this like black cape and like a kind of like a cheap Darth Vader-like suit. That's it doesn't have a helmet or a mask or anything, but it's again, a leather kind of suit with a utility belt that's got nothing on it. I don't know why you need a utility belt that's got nothing on it, but he's yelling, you cowards, come back here! All his troops are abandoning the base and leaving him there. The city is attacked by some of his fighters, which are kind of cool. They're like manta ray. They're blue again. They're like blue manta ray shaped ships, but of course it has its own defenses and it destroys them. And Stella and Elle manage to destroy all the fighters, and then they eject into space. Literally, Stella has a space helmet now and jumps out, out the porthole. And Elle again doesn't need any oxygen. He just jumps it because he's a robot. He jumps out, and they crash the floating city into Zarthorn's base, and it's destroyed and completely blown out of the universe. And that's the end. And the Emperor comes back on and says, well, for now, probably eventually dark forces will rise to challenge us, but for now we've got a period of calm and quiet, and that's the end. I skipped over a few points kind of deliberately. I don't want to spoil the entire movie for people who haven't seen it. It's very fun. It's very stupid. It's silly. It's worth watching for the fact that for 99% of this movie, Caroline Munro walks around wearing this incredibly skimpy outfit that accentuates her voluptuous curves magnificently and highlights the fact that she would have been the absolutely perfect Vampirella. if that Hammer movie had been made. Unfortunately, it was planned, and she was going to be the star originally, but two things happened. One, when she read the script, they required nudity, and she absolutely refused to do any nude scenes in any movie, and said, "That's it, I'm out." So then they went to, they hired, and two, because the Americans were going to co-produce this, they said, "We want an American star to play Vampirella." And they said, "Fine, show us somebody who's as good looking as perfect as Caroline Munro." And they came up with Barbara Lee, who was equally attractive. But I've seen some stills of Caroline Munro in the Vampirella monokini, and holy cow, she really was absolutely perfect for the role. It never got made because Hammer went bankrupt before it could be produced. There is apparently a script out there, and apparently they did do a script reading with Caroline Munro as Vampirella. It doesn't sound like it was going to be very good. It was set in the Bermuda Triangle, and it wasn't really based on the comics that much. But I think it did feature a couple of the comic characters like Adam Van Helsing and Pendragon. But again, Starcrash, 1979, well worth watching. Easily the best of the Star Wars ripoffs, despite the cheesy special effects and the corny story.